With an announcement on October 7th, the UFL unveils 3 new teams and starts a new era in spring football. My name is Logan, and welcome to the archive. Today we're going over the 3 new franchises that will be debuting in the 2026 UFL season, as well as covering some of the changes that we've seen in other existing franchises and what it means for the league. The UFL unveils 3 new teams to replace the franchises that got relocated in an Orlando press conference on the 7th. The 3 teams include the Columbus Aviators, the Louisville Kings, and the Orlando Storm. Some information was covered about changes to the upcoming season, but we'll cover that a little bit later in this video. So to get into the new teams, we'll be starting off with my personal favorite of the new additions, the Columbus Aviators. They'll be playing at historic Crew Stadium, which seats about 20,000. Their logo is like an A shaped like a propeller. It makes sense, Columbus Aviators. Interestingly, this was a name that a lot of spring football fans were expecting for Columbus. And it's a color combo that many also predicted. It's like a red, white, and blue. Although, interestingly, the blue is sort of like a baby blue, so I wonder how it'll clash with the Dallas Renegades with their blue. Personally, I thought that they would be named the Ohio Aviators, kind of to match like the Michigan Panthers, since a lot of people want there to be a rivalry between the two teams. But with Michigan relocating, I guess Columbus works well too. I think if you're someone from Columbus, you probably prefer that. They're named the Aviators because of Columbus's rich history with aviation, and I think just generally it's a cool style to go for. There's not a whole lot of jet or airplane themed teams, so I think it's a fun choice. I really love the colors. I can't get enough of that baby blue. I love the Tar Heels. I unfortunately kind of like the blue on the Renegades. I wonder if they'll have a wing motif like you see on the side of the A, on the side of the helmet, kind of like the Battlehawks. I mean, they'll probably just put the whole logo on the side, but I'm just a sucker for those unique side stickers. I'm hoping it's going to be like that. The next team that we'll be covering are the Louisville Kings. This is a team that I've seen get some criticism online for their logo. I mean, I like it personally. I really like the logo. I think it's fun. I can see the criticisms, or people compare it to the DraftKings logo, or they say it looks too similar to the Mavericks, or, there's some Birmingham fans that don't like that there's another horse team in the league. But it's always like one of those things where people dislike a logo before they see it on the field, and once they see it on their team and, in play, they like it a little bit more. Of course, the logo itself, it's a horse head on a white badge with a crown above its head. This is a tie to Louisville's history with the Kentucky Derby, and I think the crown is needed to sell the whole Kings idea. I think the colors are interesting. I think personally I'd prefer a purple and gold look, but I think that might look too similar to the Atlanta Legends. So I think they're trying to do their own thing. They're trying to be interesting and unique, so I can't fault them for that. I think it's interesting that they use the Orlando Guardians colors, where it's a forest green and then like a neon green. I'm hoping they can be distinct enough, because personally it's hit or miss for me with the Orlando Guardians, but I hope that the residents of Louisville really buy into it. I've seen a lot of excitement online, so they're one of the teams I'm most excited to see. And of course, it's another horse team in the league. I'm hoping that the league sets up some sort of rivalry game with Birmingham every year, the week of the Kentucky Derby. It's on the nose, but 2 horse teams, you have to have them play. And of course, I love a good helmet design, and since the Panthers are being relocated and they had one of the best helmets in the entire league, I really desperately want them to put this horse head rolling up the neck of the helmet, like how the Panthers had the panther head rolling up the side. I think it looks good pretty much any time a team has it. I think it looked really good in 2020 for the Seattle Dragons. It just, it's too good to not have, and it's just a solid look. So hopefully they go for that. The final new franchise that was unveiled is the Orlando Storm. They play at Interco Stadium, which seats about 25,000. Their logo is a hurricane with a lightning bolt in the middle. Their colors are orange and purple, which is interesting because we haven't seen these colors since I think the 2022 Pittsburgh Maulers. I think it's a fun look. I think they'll try to lean more into the Apollo's colors personally, because I think that would get you more buy-in from the people from the fans in Orlando. I've seen a lot of people compare this logo to other ones like Tampa Bay and the Frankfurt Galaxy, and I think just when it's the nature of the beast that whenever you have a Storm logo or a Hurricane logo, they're kind of gonna look the same more or less. So I think once we see them on the field, I think they'll be good. And I think if they can really use that lightning motif, I think that would be really awesome, because I know the DC Defenders had a look that I really liked in 2020 where they used lightning bolts, and I think it's a look that needs to come back, so I'd love to see the Orlando Storm use that more. And personally for me, I think the Orlando Storm have an interesting name, as it's kind of more of like an AAF style, like non-football-y name, because I think most football names are like plural, but the AAF used a couple non-football sounding names to me personally, like the San Diego Fleet, the Birmingham Iron, the Memphis Express. You know, the whole vibe for a lot of these new teams are more AAF feeling than like XFL or USFL or UFL, so I think if you're an AAF fan that's kind of dropped off, hopefully this will fit better for what you're looking for and you can get excited by these teams. So these are the 3 new franchises joining the league in 2026. But of course, with relocation just happening, you have to ask which rosters are we going to see in which cities. I think James Larson's reporting that the San Antonio Brahmas roster is going to be moving to Orlando sounds accurate. I think the league personally is going to try to keep franchises and teams pretty close together from where they're relocating to. I know San Antonio and Orlando aren't super close, but they're the most southern, so I think that might work. I think Panthers fans aren't going to like this, but I believe that the Panthers roster is going to be going to Columbus. I think that it makes sense for regionality. It's the best draw. Like if you're someone who lives around the area, you might be more willing to support Columbus. I think, you know, of course there's a rivalry between Michigan and Ohio, at least in college, so I've seen people online saying that they really don't want to see it, but that's what I think is going to happen. And of course, I think factor of elimination, I think that the Memphis Showboats are going to be going to the Louisville Kings. I think this will be interesting. I know the Showboats were a team that past offseason people were really excited for with a new head coach coming in. It was really promising. We just didn't see that come to fruition, but they've got a talented young defensive coordinator that I hope gets head coaching positions or head coaching interest. So I think they'll be really solid. I expect that the Louisville Kings, no matter who they put in, they're going to be a highly anticipated team, just it seems like for the buzz around the league right now. Okay, so before we get into the major elephant in the room for me, I want to talk over some few minor revisions that we've seen in branding, just generally across the league. The biggest one I think that stood out to me is the Dallas Renegades. They're returning back to their OG Bandit logo from 2020. They're making it their primary now, which is, I think, the best choice. I know that the XFL really liked their kind of more minimalistic Arlington Renegades logo, but I think the Bandit has just grown on a lot of people, so I think it's better for them to move back to it. And of course, they're playing in Frisco now, which is like an hour north of Dallas proper and not in Arlington, so I think it makes sense to move back to the Dallas name to appeal to more people. And with the league saying that all of the teams that are playing in the 2026 season will be getting new uniforms, personally, I hope that we see something closer to the 2020 Dallas Renegades design. I enjoyed the distinctive look that the 2023 Renegades look had, but I think it was just a little bit too much blue, and I think whenever your team is like a bad boy renegade outlaw kind of vibe, I think having more black will probably fit the vibe better. And of course, you know, we have a few other logo changes, like most importantly, like crazy change is the Battlehawks lose a whole feather and it's a little bit whiter. It's not really that big of a deal, but I think it's interesting that they make that kind of distinction. And then the UFL logo itself kind of has a minor font change, and it's been put inside of a football. Personally, I kind of like the old logo a little bit better, but I think this new one reads easier as like a football product, so I think when you're trying to bring in new fans, this might be more of like, oh, that's a football thing, instead of, you know, maybe people wondering what exactly UFL stands for if they just see the badge. So if you know me, you know I'm a huge Roughnecks fan. The Roughnecks are kind of the reason why I really got into football whenever I did, and you know, it's a sad day. For the 2026 UFL season, the Houston Roughnecks unfortunately have been rebranded back to the Houston Gamblers. I think the Roughnecks brand was fine. I think they just needed better marketing. I know that Mike Rapoli has said that it's on the way, that there's gonna be more, and I think we've already kind of seen that, but I just feel like the Roughnecks brand fits a bit better. You know, with Houston's oil and an homage to the Oilers. And, like, you can't even gamble in Texas, so I can't help but be a little bit salty. I think eventually I'll like it. I mean, I think the logo looks interesting. It's a more modern take. It's definitely not their vintage look that they had in the USFL. It looks like they're going to be using a little bit more yellow in the design. And, you know, maybe some old heads, like maybe some old Gamblers fans from the 80s will really be excited for the return of the Gamblers. And, you know, maybe it'll all be better. And I'm hoping that we see better attendance, because the Roughnecks attendance in the past couple years hasn't been super great. But, you know, I've seen online a lot of people aren't too happy about it. I think it makes sense. I mean, everyone who's following the social media pages are Roughnecks fans, and they've been Roughnecks fans for almost 6 years now. If they jumped on board in 2019, whenever the team logos were announced, you know, I think it'll take people a little bit of time getting used to. I know I'm going to be wearing my Roughnecks stuff. I'll probably see other people wearing it. You know, it is what it is. I'm happy to have a team still in Houston, but, you know, maybe it'll be better. Maybe it's like for the coaching staff, since they were the Gamblers from the the USFL side of the merger. Like, maybe they'll play better, hopefully. But, just the feeling with my friends and people that I've talked to about this is that, the Gamblers haven't really played in Houston since, like, the 80s. I think the vibe is that ever since they came back, they've kind of been seen as, like, a fake Houston team, because the Roughnecks have been playing in Houston, but then the Gamblers, unfortunately, because of the hub system with the USFL, just never did, so they're kind of seen as, like not a real, like, they don't really represent. Now that they are playing in Houston at the Dynamo Stadium, hopefully that kind of sentiment won't be there, but we'll just have to wait and see. And for me, this hits big, because, like, I'm a huge Halo fan, so it's, like, one of the great things about Halo Infinite and the new game that came out is that they went back to the OG art style, which is, like, so great, because the old art style, the Halo 4 and 5 art style, was not good. But, like, I can't help but feel like this feels like the next game, because, like, Halo Infinite didn't have the best reception, so this would feel like in Halo Infinite 2 or something like that. If Microsoft were to go back to the Halo 4 and 5 art style, to be like, oh, we saw that people didn't like the old one, so we're going back. It's like, no, it was good. Just stay where it was. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still going to support the team, love the players, so I'll be there, but I'll just always be part of Neck Nation. As well as introducing 3 new franchises that will be playing in the UFL 2026 season, league ownership also made a couple more statements about changes that we'll see moving into next season. First of all, there won't be any more XFL or USFL conferences. I understand this change since there's only 8 teams and really, only like 2 USFL teams left, but personally, I really liked the history and, like, the legitimacy that having the old names gave the league. It gave it some history, and for spring football, whenever teams haven't been around that long, I think that really goes a long way. And plus, like every other major American sports league has had some sort of merger, like the AFL and NFL, so I think it's fun. It helps people grapple onto the history of the league. And, ultimately, I hope that they do return to it in the future whenever we see more teams and more expansion, hopefully in 2026. I think it's fun, like I said before. So maybe we get like a XFC, maybe not a UFC. I don't know if they have the rights to that. I think it'd be cool. I understand why they don't have it now, though. It's probably going to clean things up. As well as having no more conferences, they've changed it so now the top 4 teams by record go to the playoffs. I think this will clear up a lot of drama. Like in 2023, the Battlehawks missed the playoffs despite having a better record than the Renegades, and I know for a lot of St. Louis fans that was a big deal. I think that this will clear that up a little bit. Like, there won't be a deserving team that misses the playoffs, but I think unfortunately, it might remove some interest for playoff pushes through the season, because if some teams are just really dominating, we might know the playoff picture like halfway through the season. So, it's one of those things to mix around. If fans like it more, I hope it stick. I'm thinking that the league might go back to having divisions and stuff in the future, just because as a TV product, it might give a little bit more drama for them to work with. So in addition to the other statements that were made by league ownership, we also know now that most of the teams are going to be playing in soccer stadium, which I think is a great change. I think these soccer stadiums lead to like really great environments, at least going off of Audi Field. And personally, I'm a little bit surprised, just given that my understanding was that soccer teams really didn't like sharing the field with football teams, with how torn up the fields get and with availability during the spring. But I think it's a great development. Hopefully it leads to a great product. I'd love to hear from Defenders fans about how they feel about Audi Field, because I think personally, optimistically, we might just get a whole league of Audi Field. So if I was a Defenders fan, I might feel a little bit bummed that my stadium won't have that unique atmosphere, because Audi Field's like really great. If you guys haven't seen a game in Audi Field, I'd highly recommend. That's like a must-see if you're interested in the league. Look up an Audi Field game, especially, or a DC Defenders home game, especially against the Battlehawks. And since most of the teams are playing in soccer stadiums, there's only 2 that are playing in traditional football stadiums. That's Protective Stadium in Birmingham for the Stallions, and then the Battle Dome in St. Louis for the Battlehawks. It's something that we'll have to see how the soccer stadium experiment goes. But hopefully, if it works, it works. And then for the teams that are playing in their football stadiums, I mean, I have no worries about the Battlehawks, but I really hope that the Stallions are able to stay in, because it seems like Birmingham fans really love that stadium. And, along with the news about relocation, I think they had to announce this, but they did talk about that they have expansion plans for 2028. I mean, we don't know exactly what expansion looks like, so we don't know if it'll be 2 teams or 4 teams, but personally, I think we have to see returning teams. Like, we have to see franchises that were relocated come back into the fold. I'm going to have a whole video talking about what franchises I would love to see come back in the future, so stay tuned for that. So I'm not going to go too far in depth, but I will spoil it a little bit. I think Michigan really has to return. Like, I think with Columbus, it's a perfect rivalry. And, you got a lot of fans that, are feeling burned. Their team just left after having great support year after year, so I think it's very important they return. In addition, there's also statements talking about them potentially looking at moving up the start of the season in as early as 2027. For me personally, I hope that we see the XFL kickoff time, which is like the weekend after the Super Bowl. I think this is the best time as it keeps interest after the Super Bowl, especially if the league's running playoff ads and a Super Bowl ad. It gives people less time to like forget about the league, basically. If it starts up the weekend after, a lot of people are going to tune in for that. And, I think personally it gives players more time to get on NFL rosters, which is very important. If the season starts earlier, it means it ends earlier, and it gives them more time to really get cemented into those practice squads or just, the larger roster sizes in the offseason. Because a lot of these players are more fringe players. Like, they're in the league to try to get tape going, and I think, they don't have that guaranteed spot that's going to be for them whenever the NFL season starts. So giving them more time gives them time to really show off to the coaches and say, hey, we're really great football players. And in addition, like maybe selfishly for me, I prefer an earlier start just because, in Houston, it can get over 100 degrees like late in the UFL season, especially when you're playing in June. Colder weather is better for southern teams, maybe not for, more northern teams, but here it's like it's got to be a little bit less warm. Hey, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. So what do you think about these teams? Which one is your favorite? Who are you going to root for? Who are you going to root against? Let me know down in the comments. And make sure to like this video and subscribe for more spring football content. Here at the Archive, we're going to be covering spring football year-round, so if that's what you're interested, make sure to stick along.